thought I said everything that needs to be said about X4 Foundations in this video, but it turns out there is much more to say. X4 Foundations is a complex game that requires quite a bit of understanding if you want to get it, and with its development over the years, it became a little bit more difficult to know whether you want this game or not, and which part of this game that you need. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at X4 Foundations again and deciding whether it's worth it to buy right now or not. It's also important to understand that after the previous two videos that I made about this game, I've gotten much more experience with the space games and overall in games as well. So my opinions about this game actually evolved as well. So I'm not gonna be wasting your time and give you answers right away whether this game is worth it and which parts are worth it, and then I'm gonna get deeper into details just like I always do. So is this game still worth it to this day? Well, absolutely. This game has evolved quite a lot and became much deeper and, to be fair, easier to understand experience. With upgraded tutorials, upgraded graphics, game is much more easier to get into and to stay in as well. But because of numerous expansions and DLCs, you might think, okay, if it's worth it, which part should I get? Or what should I get? But if you have never played this game, or any space game for that matter, just get the base game. It has more than enough content for you to understand what do you want from this game, or whether this game is actually for you or not. And if you have already tried it and you like it, any expansion will do. All the expansions are actually worth it based on the preferences of different races that you want to get deeper into, except for the timelines. And I want to talk about timelines a little bit later in the video. So let me just get to the details, explain what X4 Foundations is and why it is worth your time and your money as well. And this video is sponsored by this channel's brand new sponsor, Instant Gaming. If you want to get best games for the cheapest prices, no matter it's on a PC, PlayStation, Xbox or Nintendo consoles, and you don't want to wait for any sales, Instant Gaming is the way to go. And I also partnered with Instant Gaming for epic giveaway of any game of your choice in the description down below. So click the link in the description to take part in there. And also every purchase that you make on Instant Gaming through my link will help the channel as well. So click the link in the description to get the best games for the best prices. Now back to the video. So X4 Foundations is a single player, very important part here, space sim sandbox game. And many people in my previous videos in the comment sections said that this is basically Mountain Blade in space, and I could not tell it better if I wanted to. If you have played Mountain Blade, this is basically it, but in space, but a bit more complex as well. Well, because of the space theme, of course. This game does not have a central hero, and this game does not have a central storyline as well. This is an open world sandbox, which will be different every single time you play. Well, starting conditions are more or less similar in every playthrough, but the things develop and change much more differently in every playthrough as well. And based on whether you have a base game or expansions, you have multiple different, well, campaigns that you can start with. The difference between them is that you start with different races, different professions, and you have a different kind of like storylines. But in reality, you're not restricted with any one of them. It just dictates your starting conditions, and you can immediately deviate from it as soon as you start the game. The world itself is open world, but it's divided into sectors and sometimes into subsectors as well. Sectors are connected with kind of like a portals or gateways, and subsectors are connected with something like interstellar highways, which basically slingshot you between these subsectors. The world map is 2D, the actual map, the sectors, but the sectors themselves are of course in all three dimensions. Game is happening in the first person, but while you're flying your ship, you can actually switch to a third person view as well. But it's meant to be played in a first person because all the UI elements are in the first person. And when I say that you are meant to do whatever you want in this game, I mean literally that. There is no caveats in that. You're just given freedom to do whatever you want. Whether you want to be a pirate, whether you want to be a military, whether you want to be a trader, miner, scrapper, whatever way you want to play, you can play in this game. And every single one of those roles are meant to give you, well, credits to unlock bigger and better things. And your goal is, well, to enjoy the sandbox and eventually, if you want to do this, create kind of like your own empire. And yes, I mean in the literal sense, because you can hire other NPCs and other ships and give them command to do different things. Like for example, to patrol different sectors for pirates, or go for mining, or go for trading, or go for scrapping, or whatever the thing that you can do yourselves, NPC will do as well. And the best thing is, whether you will give those people commands to do things for you or not, the world itself does not revolve around you. The NPCs, the ships that inhabit this galaxy, are doing their own things in this incredibly simulated economy, meaning that all the things that you do have a ripple effect in the galaxy around you. Like for example, if you disrupt the supply line of like basic ore, it might cause that some faction will not be able to build their starships, which will not be able to defend their own mining ships, which in turn might cause other factions attack this faction because they see it as weak, and in turn the stronger faction might interfere with your own things like your mining operations or your trading operations, taking and changing the prices, or just straight out hunting you and treating you as an enemy. Yes, the things like that can happen. And not just that, Galaxy is also under the threat of Xenon, which are basically your AI robots which are attacking everyone and everything, and with the 7.0 and the timelines you do have also endgame crisis as well. So in an endgame, this game kind of like it transforms into space sim strategy, where you mine resources, set up supply lines, build your ships, build different products, build different ships, build different stations, and even go to war with other factions and other races. And yes, you can do all of those things. And many people in the previous videos also compared this to EVE Online, and in its premise is similar, except that this is a single player and EVE Online is multiplayer where other people are actually dictating all the things happening around. Here, it's done by NPCs and by you. And how does it play and whether it's a test of time or not. And might I say, plays perfectly. You have a Newtonian physics, you're basically free to move in all 6 degrees of freedom. You have optional flight assist on if you really want the Newtonian physics, basically flinging you in all the different directions, just like Newton's first law dictates. You have your regular mode where you can move up to certain speeds. You have a travel mode to move between the stations or between the sectors, which is drastically increasing your speed. You have your scanners. Ships are very customizable. You can change different modules, make them faster, make them tankier, or install different weapons. And you also have a bunch of different ships as well. And each faction in Trace have their own ships. And ships range from smaller scouts to huge capital ships. And yes, you're actually free to stand up and move around in all of your ships. Now granted, the interiors are not as detailed as it is in games like Star Citizen, because yes, one of the main gimmicks of Star Citizen is having these very detailed interiors. Here interiors are quite limited, but they are there. Larger ships can dock smaller ships, you can create flight wings, you can have other ships following you as an escort and things like that, and it's incredibly fun to play because yeah, it's meant to give you all the freedom of the sandbox to do whatever the hell that you want. And one of the main questions that people had, and I actually had as well, whether this game is actually more fun or requires like other gear to play, like for example HOTAS or anything else. And let me address that as well. Well, it does not require that. You can play perfectly fine with a keyboard and mouse. However, all the additional gear just simply enhances the experience. Like for example, I play with a couple of VKB Gladiator NXT Evos, which builds a HOSAS system, basically hands-on stick and stick. It's a double stick system, and controlling the ships in this way is much more immersive than flying with a keyboard and mouse. And yeah, as it's supposed to be. And integration is quite seamless, except that you need to keybind everything to be able to control it. I suggest you, if you haven't done this, play the tutorial level where everything will be explained to you and keybind your HOTAS or HOSAS from there, based on the things that you will learn from there, of course. One thing that actually enhanced my experience even more is head and eye tracking. I used both Trek IR and Tobii Eye Tracker, and the experience was much better. And by the way, a review of both of those devices will be coming very soon on this channel. But now let's talk about money. Well, at least the prices of the game. Game is actually available on Steam for the base price of $49.99. It's not even $60 game, and the lowest it has ever gone was $14.99 or 15 bucks, which is around 70% off. And this is actually the lowest sale price. And if you missed it, you can get it on Instant Gaming for a little bit more than that. Now, was it worth it for this price? Well, if you're getting this in a sub $20 price, it's absolutely worth it. It's an insane value. This game has an absolute tons and tons of content, even without any DLCs. And because of constantly changing world around you, this game has an insane replay value. And I didn't even talk about the mods, because mods is very huge in this game, transforming entire universe, if you want, into something else. Like for example, the Star Wars, and the Star Wars mod is probably one of my favorite X4 mods. There are much more smaller things than that, like for example, different chips, different weapons, and things like that. But what about timelines? What about the latest DLC, at least at the moment of the recording of this video? Well, the timelines is actually a little bit different compared to everything else that came out before. If before all the DLCs and expansions were adding more storylines, adding different races, different playable factions and things like that, timelines adds a new game mode, which are kind of like a short, well, stories and short scenarios that you can play. It can be racing scenario, combat scenario, and things like that. The issue with the timelines is that it's separate from the base game, the open universe game. Basically, it has nothing to do with your save games. It's completely different game mode. And the issue is that if you don't know how to play this game, and if you don't know how to play this game more or less well, you will have some hard time playing this game. So timelines is more for more experienced X4 players than for the beginners. And if you hear there there's a chance that you are simply a beginner. But if you're not and want something that is a little bit challenging, like for example beating different high scores because Timelines has a high score mechanics, then yeah, Timelines is actually worth it. Oh yeah, and speaking of Timelines, I forgot to mention one more very important thing, well, which might make or break the game for you, and it is the story and presentation of the game. Yeah, game has actually a very deep lore and very amazing lore, to be fair. It's very interesting and very fun. But the presentation, well, imagine Elder Scrolls Oblivion, but worse. The characters are dull, the voice acting is not good, and yeah, there's not much they say, and yes, presentation itself outside of text is not good. Even in Timelines, which kind of focuses on story as well. Yes, it's manageable, it's not unbearable, but it's rather cringy and quite low quality. So I would not get Timelines for the story expansion of the X4 Foundations. It is there, but yeah, it's not the best. I love it regardless, but I need to say bad things where the things are bad. So yeah, these are my thoughts about X4 Foundations. And if you want to watch my kind of like first review of the game, where I talk about the best space game that nobody plays, you can watch it right here. Or if you like the space games and want 27 best space games list, you can watch it right here as well. And yeah, don't forget the Insta Gaming giveaway in the description down below, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Take care.